Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of No Holds Barred here at the Toronto Sun. Rob Wong and Postmedia wrestling writer Jan Murphy with you as always. Today, we are pleased to be joined by someone with over 30 years experience in the wrestling business. He is best known for his time in WWE as European and Intercontinental Champ and as a member of the Nation of Domination. You are looking at the real deal now. It is D-Lo Brown. D-Lo, thanks so much for chatting with us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. It's funny you did the head waggle, if you want to call it that, right off the bat. I know that's, when I instantly think of your name, that's the first thing that pops up. I mean, I still don't know even how you can do it. It makes my neck stiff just like watching you do it. How did you do it for so many years?
To tell you the truth, I don't know why it doesn't hurt or how it's able to be done, but it's one of those quirks of your body that just work, and it fit into my persona and worked out well. So I'm lucky, and I get a head shaking at me every day when I'm at the supermarket or walking through anywhere. People go shake the head, shake the head. So I get it everywhere I go.
I guess you've
You know,
trained the muscles so much that
Yes.
it doesn't hurt anymore. Jan?
just Rob, you mentioned Nation of Domination, and a little shiver went up my spine. What a great memory. Probably the last time prior to what we saw with sort of the bloodline, the last great time when we had these great stables would have been back with the Nation of Domination. Relive that time for us a little bit.
Just that whole era was so cool because wrestling was on the rise then, where it was the rise of Steve Austin and The Rock, and Attitude Era was springing up, and there was a nation right there as a foundation piece and a building block, and to watch the arenas fill up, because when I first got into WWF at the time, the arenas were half full and there was low energy in the building. And then it was like overnight, Steve Austin lit up, and man, it was like living in a rock concert every night of the week, every city we were going in, like the energy in the building and in the back, and even in the locker room, the boys just happy to be there. So to be a pivotal point in that, as in a group that was heavily involved, I couldn't have asked for a better situation.
Spent some time with Charles Wright, but a couple months ago we had him up here for an event, and same thing. He talked about that time. He doesn't watch wrestling now. He says, not that he ever really did, by the sounds of it, but being
Yes.
part of that, he talks about how special that was, and how he loves to relive that, those memories of that time.
Well, one of the coolest thing, and the reason why the nation worked so well, is the fact that we were all friends. We're still friends to this day, and it's easy to go entertain when you're going out there with three of your best friends, and you happen to be doing it on TV in front of a camera. And what you saw from us on camera is what we were in the car, at the hotel, in the restaurant. I mean, it was just us put in front of a camera. So it was so cool, to just be part of a historic part of wrestling, and as well as doing it with guys you loved and adored.
So when it comes to the Nation of Domination, as we spoke about, it came at a perfect time where there were so many stables and factions running during that time
Mhm.
in WWF. What do you remember about, the first time that you heard that this was going to be put together, and what were your thoughts? Because, I think for some people, maybe they have dreams of becoming, a single star, and they just kind of want to go it alone. And maybe if you get put into a group, you're a little bit worried that you may get lost in the shuffle a little bit. But what do you remember about that idea being broached to you and how you felt about it at the time?
I mean, I couldn't have been more excited because I was just, on the independent level, just trying to find my way. And when the opportunity presented to me of being part of the nation, I'm like, well, first of all, Ron Simmons was the guy I looked up to and watched on TV, and was like, damn, I want to be just like him when I grow up. So now, a few years later, to be standing in the ring next to him and be part of what he's doing and building, I couldn't have been more happy. And I never worried about getting lost in a group, because I had good mentors in that group who always told me to, when the spotlight was on me, make sure you turned up so people remember those minutes that you're the focal point. So I never worried about getting buried in a group, and I knew, my personality would shine through eventually. So I was just happy to be surrounded by really good dudes.
The head waggle, just going back to that for a second. Remember the first time you did it, and was it a heel gesture at the time or a baby face gesture at the time?
It was a heel gesture, and it's funny you asked the first time I did it. It started out the night before. Rocky and I were, I forget what town we were in, but back in '97, we used to carry our DVDs around like sleeves of CDs because we'd carry them everywhere we go because we had, portable DVD players. And so you had your road movies, you had your staple 10 or 12 CDs. Well, one DVD was the movie Friday. So we're sitting there and watching Friday one night, and there's a scene where Debo comes up and the dude goes, hey, my mama wants to know if I can get my bike back, and Debo goes, what bike? And then that's when Debo uppercuts him, and Chris Tucker gets over top of him and goes, you got knocked up. And so I watched that night. I didn't think twice about it. It was just one of those things. Fast forward to the next night on Raw. Rocky is wrestling Ken Shamrock, and the moment's coming. We're about to go to commercial break. And in my head, I can hear steal a moment, make sure everybody sees you. So Ken Shamrock gets clothesline out to the floor, and the camera zooms in on him, and I could hear JR going, whatever he's pushing us to break, and I could hear him. And all of a sudden, I just run up to Ken, look over top of him. The camera's right up my shoulder. I got, you just got knocked the blank out. And I shook my head and didn't think twice about it. And all I could think about was, I just dropped an F bomb on national TV. I'm gonna get fined. And all I thought about was the remaining matches. Oh my God! As soon as I go back to the curtain, Vince is gonna find me for dropping an F bomb. So as I walk through the curtain, I'm scared. I look around the corner. There's two Vince's looks. There's Vince when he goes like this, or Vince when he goes, you don't want the second one. So as I go around the corner, I look, I see him. He looks at me, he goes, come here. And he just looked at me, he goes, the thing you did with your head, keep doing it.
Incredible.
Okay. And I ran out of the room and I was like, I didn't get fined. I didn't get fined. But then it dawned on me that I had done something that piqued his curiosity. And if I can pique his curiosity, then what's that going to do with the fans? He was, for whatever his faults are, he was always wired into the pulse of wrestling. And the fact that he had seen that, saw something, well, then the next night I started running with it. I couldn't turn the volume up more, and I was like, if he wants it, I'm gonna give it to him. And that's where the head shake came in. And a couple weeks later, the strut was at it, and the evolution of D'Lo was beginning.
Wow, incredible story. I think the Million Dollar Man used to tell me all the time, it's his laugh, right? People, ask for the laugh all the time, and the Undertaker gets
Hmm.
the eye roll. You get asked for the head waggle. It's amazing, right?
Well, if you're fortunate enough where you get an iconic taunt that people still ask for outside of wrestling, 30 years removed from being on TV, it's pretty damn cool. It's pretty damn cool. And just the fact that something I created touched the wrestling fan so much that it's what I'm known for, I couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. So you talked about the Attitude Era and just how you guys are wrestling in packed arenas and stadiums every night seemingly for many years there. Do you remember maybe when the switch sort of flipped? Because as you mentioned, when you first started in WWF at the time, you're wrestling in front of half full crowds. Do you remember the
Hmm.
first night where you're like, "Whoa, this is different. Like this is not the normal that we're accustomed to."
It was. I can give you an example. I'll use Madison Square Garden as an example. We would run Madison Square Garden every month. And then the month before we were there, it was half full, low energy. We'd go out there and Madison Square Garden had lost its oomph. It was just a house show, not the garden. And then Royal Rumble happened, or King of the Ring happened. It was King of the Ring. And Austin dropped the famous 316 promo. And the next night, you saw people with these 316 signs. And then we go back to the garden a month later. Now it's three quarters full. And then we go back to the garden 2 months later. And now this thing is standing room only and they're turning people away at the doors. And it was, you could just, the energy in the room was electric. You could feel it. It wasn't a crowd that you heard. It was one you literally felt on your skin because it was that lit up. So over the course of those 2 or 3 months, you could see just that particular building grow. Now, magnify that for every building we were doing around the country. When we'd go around, it would be one way, come back 2 or 3 months later, and the building was completely different. It got to a point where there was a point where you could just put the WWE logo on the billboard out front with not announcing a card, not one name, and the show would sell out. You would just put the logo up and say June 15th, boom, sold out show. And that was in a matter of months. So it was something special to watch and be part of.
A lot is made of the super stadiums hosting WrestleMania and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
people might have forgotten Toronto hosted Raw and SmackDown at a 50,000 seat stadium during the Attitude Era.
Yes. Yes. Long before the mega stadiums were happening, Sky Dome was rocking, and we would draw more than the Blue Jays did. I mean,
Absolutely.
we draw packed houses in that big ass building. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I remember that
Toronto
well.
Toronto led the way with that.
Yeah, it's really remarkable the type of crowds that this city has brought in for wrestling over the years. So it's funny you mentioned Canada, and I was talking before about how you've got over 30 years experience, and I think we're coming up now on that 31-year anniversary for you making
Hmm.
your debut in WWF, and you wrestled John Tenta, Canada's own Earthquake. As
Yeah.
a jobber, recently inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as part of the natural disasters. I was actually watching the
Mhm.
match back the other day. It's not a super long match, of course,
No,
unfortunately
no,
for
not at
you.
all.
You're just jobbing for Earthquake there, but you took the Earthquake Splash, which is always a terrifying move to watch anyone take. But what do you remember about that match specifically?
Man, John couldn't have been nicer to me, even for a guy he didn't have to care about, or I was just a name to come there to enhance him. He didn't have to care about me or anything, and he was one of the nicest dudes that I've ever been around. And I remember being in that match, and I there's one part that they edited out because I tripped on the ropes, and he clotheslined me on the side of my head.
Oof.
And literally, here's this giant of a man who clotheslined me on the top of my head. In the middle of the match, goes, I'm sorry, you okay? You okay?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes, I'm great." And we ended up doing it again, and we got to the back, and he apologized again. And from that moment, I told, John Tenta taught me how to be as a professional to anybody you're in the ring with. Doesn't matter if they're just a job guy, enhancement guy, or they're a top dude. You treat them all with respect. And I remember fast forward a few years later when I came back, and he was Golga from the Oddities, and I remember telling him that story. And to his credit, he remembered that match, which is crazy. He remembered that match, and then I remember thanking him for teaching me how to be a pro because he was just one of the nicest dudes I've ever been around.
How did the Undertaker treat you? It's pretty well known that the Undertaker ran the locker room, and
Yes.
I've even heard stories of people being forced, like Dolph Ziggler, not being welcome to sit in the dressing room for periods of time. How was your relationship with Mark Calloway, aka the Undertaker?
It was good with Taker. Here's the thing: if Taker liked you, he liked you a lot, and if he didn't, you sat in the hallway. You made sure not to get on his bad side, and as long as you're respectful to him, to the boys, to the locker room, and to the business, he was good with you. It's when you were a young buck who thought he knew better or what have you, or rub people the wrong way. You had to learn a little hard lesson and get this is the way we do things in this locker room. And the cool thing about Taker was like a lot of guys, this is when obviously the business was taking off, and Taker's already established star, and guys were starting to get separate locker rooms. Like, okay, DX dressed over here, and these guys dressed over there. Taker would come right in the middle of the main locker room. He would pull a chair right to the dead center and throw his bag down. That's how the king of the locker room is supposed to act. He's there with everyone, there for you to talk to, there for you to ask advice to, because he's right there in the center of the room. And you got a chance to go, like, if you wonder how a main event match is put together, go sit and listen to Taker and Austin put their match together. And you had that ability because he was right. They were right there. So I mean, Taker's one of the coolest dudes ever. And Yeah, I got a few stories I can't tell on air, but he's a good dude.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure you got a lot of stories that you can't tell. I'm hoping we got one here, though, about Mark Henry. We talked to him very recently. Jan and I did.
Hmm.
You know him very well, and you guys
Hmm.
were running the show together back in the day there in the mid '90s with the Nation. Mark was incredible with us. I mean, he's such a super nice guy, such a knowledgeable guy as
Hmm.
well. But what do you remember about him when he first started? Because that's always a big leap to come from where he did to become what he became in the professional wrestling industry. But you see the way he talks about it now and looks back at it. I mean, he clearly went full into it and really identifies himself as that. We knew him what he
Hmm.
was before, but the career that he's had is pretty remarkable. What are your thoughts about Mark, and what do you remember about him when he first got started?
When Mark first got started, he was a far different dude than what he is now. And it's hard to tell someone who has competed at the highest level in powerlifting and weightlifting and competed at the Olympics and is already a celebrity in his own right to now come into this locker room and take a back seat and uh, you know work your way up the card again to get to the top spot. So Mark in the beginning rubbed people the wrong way because he was very confident in who he was. Uh, but Mark is a student of the game, and that's what endeared Mark to everyone. Mark really worked hard on getting good at being a pro wrestler, and it was a rough road at first. It wasn't that easy at first for Mark. He didn't find his footing. He didn't really mesh well. He moved around and from gimmick to gimmick, but then eventually it clicked, and that's when it went to the Hall of Pain, and that's when the famous retirement speech with Cena, where he went to a whole different level. But the cool thing about Mark is when he started really getting connected to the people is when he allowed his personality that he had in the locker room to go into the ring, and that was the sexual chocolate persona. That was Mark being Mark in front of the camera. Before he had to be that he was trying to be this stoic strong man, and no one was buying it. And when he allowed his personality, because if you've talked to Mark, he's full of life, full of energy. Like his natural personality it attracts people. And when he started doing the sexual chocolate, gimmick, that's when people really started to take to him and could see Mark for who he was.
Going back, before we leave that Attitude Era sort of journey, that was also a time when the curtain started to be pulled back a bit more, and
Hmm.
people were allowed to speak more freely in the media. How was that? I mean, because you had the Undertaker who has said, he protected that business with his life. Like the man was
Hmm.
never out of character if there was a camera or a person who wasn't on the inside around him, right? But we came into this era and they started to allow media interviews and be out of character and things like this. How was it to sort of balance that?
See, I came in at like a transition time because Taker's like he's like one of the last of the old guard, and then I was that crossover bridge to like the talent today. So as I was coming in, protecting the business became less and less important, and entertaining became more and more important. And letting people connect with you as a person started becoming more something that was pushed by the office. So for me, it was an easy transition because yes, I knew all about kayfabe, and I grew up in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, so I totally knew and understood what was expected of me and what could or couldn't be done. But then as we started growing bigger as a media company and WWF turned to WWE and we started growing, it was sports entertainment was coined, and it was accessibility was the way that was going to push the product forward, and that was was going to draw more fans in.
Fantastic. I mean, there's this urban legend that Vince McMahon spent his last X million dollars bringing Mike Tyson in that bid to, win that Monday Night War, and everything sort of changed from that point on. If you could go back and point to two moments, it would be that, and of course Mick Foley winning the title and WCW pointing everybody to go and watch, right?
Hmm.
Fantastic to look back at this time with someone who lived in it because as fans, we can only see what is fed to us, and as media, we can only ask what can get answered, right? So it's an interesting perspective to hear you talk about that balance at that time.
One of the crazy things about it is while you're living in the moment, you don't realize the significance of what is happening around you. It is not till you have the benefit of hindsight a few years later, and you're like, whoa, like I lived and walked in the greatest time in wrestling, and I was a part of that, and I'm part of that history. And you don't realize the enormity of what it is until once again 30 years later someone is stopping you in the store and asking you for an autograph or for a head shake or asking a question about the Attitude Era. I mean, I'm sitting here doing an interview with you guys right now based on 1997. That's pretty damn cool.